Moving to Australia can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. The Move to Australia directory from Smart Steps to Australia brings together all the essential services you need into one convenient place, making it easier to find the right professionals to turn your dream into reality. Whether you're looking for a trusted migration agent, competitive shipping quotes, guidance on buying your first home, or help relocating your beloved pet, our directory has it all. We've curated the best services to support your new life in Australia. Find everything you need to make your move stress-free, with experts just a click away. Visit directory.smartstepstoaustralia.com and simplify your relocation journey today.
Welcome to the New Life in Australia podcast, hosted by me, Karen Bleakley, founder of smartstepstoaustralia.com. Moving to Australia with my family was a life-changing experience, but it wasn't without its challenges. That's why I'm passionate about making the relocation and resettlement process easier for you so you can enjoy this exciting adventure. Join me and my special guests as we share professional secrets and tips, learn from people who've made the move, and discover businesses that can help you realise your dreams. Now is the best time to create the life you've always wanted. This podcast is here to show you what's possible and to inspire you every step of the way. Let's go.
Let's take a moment to acknowledge the Gubbi Gubbi people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I live, work and play. I thank them for the privilege of being able to live in such an incredible part of the world, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of the New Life in Australia podcast. This week I've been having a really fabulous chat with Tonya Davidson from Davidson Property Advocates. Now, Tonya has been on the podcast before. I'll pop the link to that episode in the show notes to get an overview about buying property in the Melbourne and Mornington Peninsula area. But this week's episode was all about negotiation and strategy when it comes to buying property. Tonya shared so many really useful, valuable tips, lots of information that I just didn't even think of. So I'm sure you're going to find a lot of value in this episode. So let's get started and roll it now. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of the New Life in Australia podcast. Today I'm here with Tonya Davidson from Davidson Property Advocates. Hey Tonya, good morning. Can you tell us a little bit about you and who you are and who you help?
Hi Karen, great to see you again. Yes, who I am, Tonya Davidson. I've been in property for, over 3 decades now. And I've been on the other side in sales and auctioneering for many years in the war room. And in 2019, I just wanted to disrupt the disparity and represent buyers. So I set up this company and we've had great success. We've won Buyer Advocate of the Year the last 3 years, and 2 weeks ago I won Buyer Advocate of Australia.
Oh, wow. So, congratulations.
I might hang up those awards and stop applying for now and just focus on my clients. So the company's called Davidson Property Advocates. We work in Melbourne. We don't work in other states. And how do we help buyers? We help them 5 ways. Time, for obvious reasons, but also time to do due diligence very quickly. Time is your biggest advantage in negotiation, and a lot of people don't realise that. 2 is intel, and that's a real big piece around protection. You don't know what you don't know, and I've seen it all in 3 decades. So we like to say within the office we have a healthy level of paranoia for our clients. 3 is off markets. That's really underscored by the deep relationships we have with agents. 4 is negotiation, and it's very nuanced to real estate. So I've represented a number of people that negotiate for a living, and they really do have that aha moment when we're in the negotiation, because it is a lot different to legal negotiations, etc. And then lastly, we protect our clients' privacy. We keep their details out of the agent's CRM so they're not disadvantaged. The agent doesn't know what their limit is, what else they've seen. And as I said, they're not disadvantaged when we sit down at the negotiation table.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we've had you on the podcast before, so you've given us a lot of tips and useful information in a previous episode. So I'll be linking that in the show notes as well. Can you kind of go through a little bit about how the process works of actually employing a buyer's advocate to help you with the process? Like, how do you walk people through the process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We keep it really simple. So we do represent a lot of people from all corners of the world, and our business is set up to cater for them. The first is usually people reach out via email, and I get up super early, so I can easily call the UK before I go into the gym at 5 a.m. And so I think it's really good in this kind of intimate relationship of buyer advocate and client to at least have that first initial call if we can. Now, that doesn't always happen. But we can do that, answer any high-level conversations, just see if it's a good fit. And then I can refer them to somebody else if it's out of my area that I specialize in. And then we go to a Zoom, and the Zoom takes 45 minutes. It's complimentary. We go through their brief in detail with data, which there's a lot of takeaways. They can really see the end of the journey, what their money's going to buy, because it's very misleading when you're looking on REA, realestate.com, when you're in London, because you're looking at the quotes and that's not the sale price. So we look at real data. We have a number of sites of everything that's gone through the Valuer General's computer, and that includes off markets, auctions, EOI, and it gives you a really good framework. What that does is it manages expectations, but it saves people a lot of time, because if they're not really going to achieve what they want with that brief, they make the changes now and save themselves 4 months of heartache. So there's a lot of takeaways. The second part of the meeting, we go through our processes and how we help and the journey in detail. And then at the end, we provide a fixed fee. And we don't do off-the-shelf fees. We don't do percentages. My belief is an advocate's fee should never be hitched to the price you pay. It should be independent and fixed. So that fee is born out of the brief that the client will send prior to that Zoom. We send a little link and they fill that in as best they can, and that gives us a guide, and then we can research that and provide that fixed fee. And then we ask people to go away and think about it. And I'm up front. I said, look, I'm not, believe me, I can close people and I can close a deal, but this is not the time. Advocacy, you've got to be able to circle back and lean in for it to be the right synergy. And so I asked people to go away and have a think about it, and then they circle back, and then we start off on the right foot, and then the journey continues.
Yeah, and just back to what you were saying as well about you have all that data that you can help provide people with. It's about so much more than that as well, because your expertise is there, and people like myself moving over from the UK over here, you don't know the areas, you don't know what you're just looking blindly on realestate.com domain and all of that stuff. And data's important, but actually there's so much more to it than that, isn't there?
Look, there is. And there's so much filling my head now to protect clients from. But for example, let's say you're looking in Richmond, hypothetically. Richmond's really broken up into 4 parts. And the layperson in London wouldn't know that. And there's certain streets that I won't buy above. And I've had clients that have said, oh, we really love this we're in the middle of a search, and they'll send me a link. Oh, you haven't shown us this one. This looks great value. And I type back, this is opposite an injecting room. Do you really want to live? Oh, right, no. But if someone without an advocate, you would not know, because this injecting room looks like an art gallery. You would know. So if you got onto Google Maps and did a little circle, you'd think, oh, yeah, that's nice. No, it's not. So they're the nuances that we know to protect. That's one level. Then there's other levels. So, you might like something. You personally might like it. But when we go through a property, we go through and we look at it through the eyes of resale. And a floor plan, if the floor plan's not right, now remember, I've stood on the door, of thousands of properties for sale. So I know what buyers like and what they don't like. And if the floor plan is flawed, you will have a problem in selling it. We want you to enjoy living there, but we want the asset to grow, and we don't want it to be the money pit, and we don't want it to be compromised. Because if the market shifts, it's compromised properties that suffer. So I had a client that I got 1,000 of these stories. Actually, I was just on a Zoom team before because I'm doing some more work for him. But when we were initially looking, he found this great warehouse. It was next to a petrol station. Now, many years ago, I sold a property next to a petrol station. I know what's involved. I know how hard it is. You just can't give them away. And I said, yeah, it's a great property. Anyway, I steered him off that and bought a great property in Richmond Hill. And not next to a petrol station, and it was just groovy. And at the end of the process, he said to me, you were never going to let me buy that other property, were you? And I said, no, I wasn't, but I just had to be diplomatic about it. Because he was trying to convince me, it's not open for long, and it closes at X time. And I'm like,
gently steering him away.
Resale, forget it.
Oh, that leads really into the topic really of today is going to be very much about strategy and negotiating. And when you're buying, especially for your first property, it's probably your first home in Australia, should you have a strategy, and how do you even come up with a strategy? What should that strategy be?
That is a big question. I can't answer it simply.
Not in a 20-minute podcast.
I can say, yes, you need a strategy. I mean, that's what we do. We strategize every day. There's strategy in all parts. So the planning before you sort of step in, then there's the strategy in how you look and finding the property. Then there's the strategy with the due diligence. Then there's the strategy of the negotiation. That's a lot of people don't realize that. And I'll talk about that, I'm sure, later in this podcast. So yes, there is strategy on all aspects. For the layperson overseas, it's tough to do detailed strategy on all of these sections that we do, because some of them you can't emulate and recreate. So what a client from overseas, if they're going it alone, so not a client, what a buyer from overseas would find challenge with is they don't have the relationships. They don't have the trust. They don't have the transparency with the agents. And that makes it really hard. And then coupled with learning about how things are quoted. And each agent quotes differently. And so I think that is the really tough part. Then let's say they jag the property. Often the negotiation will implode, but they won't know what's gone wrong. So I had a client, a very smart man. He came to me, and he really came to me for privacy reasons because he knew the vendor. But then when we got into it, he said, I can't believe the strategy in your negotiation. He said, I now know why I lost those other two properties. And these were significant properties, $5 million. He said, I can see it now because I inform people. I'm an educator. I tell them what I'm doing throughout the process. And what he doesn't realize is that negotiation is one of hundreds of negotiations or a variant of. So there are lots of elements in that one, but the next one will use different elements. And that's a career. That's trying to learn a career to be really successful in that space. It's difficult for buyers.
Yeah, no, it isn't, especially when you're new to the country as well as the system, the buying system over here, and there's so much that you don't know. So with sort of thinking up your property buying strategy, is that something that people should be kind of getting involved in before they make the move, or should they?
Yeah, I think so. And I think peace of mind, just knowing where you're heading. And the more thinking music you can have, and the more you can sort of have a look at different areas online. So when I meet with people, the things, there's certain things I'm asking and advising, because some people know what areas they want to be in. Some like, can you help us? And I know a lot of areas in Melbourne. So I lived in the south. I currently live in the inner east. I went to school in Port Melbourne. So I've got friends all over Melbourne, in the north, city. So having lived 1,000 lives, I know all of the nooks and crannies and the schools, etc. So I think Zoom is really good because it can get you thinking. It can get you, so sometimes they don't have pre-approval, and that can take 3 months. So, okay, I can refer you to a broker. And look, I've got a massive black book that I refer people to, and our company doesn't receive referral fees. So anyone that I refer to people, it's referred because they're good. So that works very well for us. But I think, start the process before you leave, because there's some preparation to do. And then you can start exploring the areas that perhaps we do talk about on the Zoom and whether it's a good fit. And then by the time you land, you can hit the ground running, and you haven't lost months and months.
Yeah, no, and you can get started straight away. That sounds good. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making when they don't have that clear strategy?
They choose the wrong area.
I think that's easily done when you just arrive and you think you're knowing an area, but you don't necessarily know the area.
Or
properly.
you make that, you might choose the right suburb, but you choose the wrong area, like across the road from the injecting rooms. You choose the wrong thing. So you're not thinking about resale. Or, here's a story. I had these clients the other day. It's always medicos. I had these clients the other day, and I've got a brief, and we do detailed brief. And so I took them through a property, which was bang on their brief, because they led the conversation with, we want capital growth. And they said, oh, look, and they were great. I love them. And they said, oh, look, we've just seen a property. I said, oh, yeah, where is it? She said, oh, it's Hawthorn. I said, well, that's not in our brief, but go on. I like Hawthorn. I live in Hawthorn. She said, it's on Barker's Road. I said, no. And she started laughing. I said, I bet it was shiny and it was like a Christmas bauble. She said, yeah, it was. I said, that's why we do a brief, so that we're not tempted by shiny Christmas baubles. Because you told me you wanted to have capital growth. That property will not give you capital growth. So let's stick to the plan. And they laughed and they said, you're right. So if you don't have me or a brief, you're going to see this shiny Christmas bauble and you're going to buy it.
That sounds
and you're
like
going to
me
be in
and
a
my
world of
husband.
pain in 5 years.
Yeah. It's so easy to get distracted by things that
It
look
is,
good in the
because
moment.
Yeah, you go inside and it's beautiful. But if you've got a brief, this is the analogy I use. And I said this to them. I said, have you ever been shopping hungry? And she said, yeah. I said, I bet you bought Oreos and Tim Tams. And they were laughing. I said, well, this is the same thing. We've got a shopping list and we've got to stick to the shopping list, right? Or else we're going to buy Tim Tams and Oreos. That's not helpful.
That's
Anyway,
great
that's my
analogy. I
analogy.
love that. It's so good.
And for those in the UK, do you have Tim Tams?
We have penguins, which are very similar to Tim Tams, but I think Tim Tams are superior.
Well,
personally,
when they come here, they'll learn Tim Tams.
They will. So when it comes to defining what kind of property you're looking for, how do you help people work out what is suitable? Like, what is that framework that they want?
Yeah. I think this is where the Zoom is good, because you lose a bit in an email, because conversation, you got to have a conversation. You got to get a feel for people. I had this client once and she was a ripper, and we were chatting and we got to know each other really well, and she was from interstate. She said, you know what? I'm just sending you some happy snaps of me and my lifestyle just so you get the right vibe. It was the best thing she could have done. I totally got her. I don't ask for this from clients, but she provided it. I totally got her. I said, I've got it for you. And we bought in 1 week. And she said, you got it bang on. And we bought this property in St Kilda. It had water views. It was just really uber cool, and it was close to all of the, cool stuff in St Kilda. It was a bit edgy because I got that through the photos. So, but for normal people who don't send me photos, I ask about family and their family makeup. Do they have a dog? Park nearby. They'll need a bit of dirt. Children. With children, how old they are, because often they want to be on the same level. They don't want to have a master upstairs and the kids downstairs. Lifestyle, what they like to do. Are they foodies? Are they sporty? Do they need access to the CBD? What's transportation requirements? What do they look like? Do you have personal styles on property? Some people say we're like mid-century. I'll go, well, we've got to buy Bayside, because inner city and inner east wasn't established at mid-century. It was established turn of century. So we're not going to find that architecture there. So that could be driving somebody. So I think that organic conversation I have with people, and because I've been doing it so long, I can go, right, I think they're going to be really happy in these suburbs, and then we can explore that. And I'll talk about that suburb and what it offers and what it's like and the vibe and things like that.
Yeah, no, and I think there's a lot there that when you're thinking about buying your property, you might not even be considering. Like you were saying, if you've got little kids, some houses here are set so that you've got kind of the kids on one floor and the grown-ups room on another floor, and that doesn't work when you've got sort of 3 toddlers or whatever. It's things you haven't even necessarily thought about.
Correct, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about helping people who are moving from overseas. Generally, it's a good idea for them to reach out to you before they arrive in Australia and get the ball rolling and get started looking into things.
Look, they don't have to, but I think it's beneficial. Others have found benefit with that, and it doesn't cost anything. My dad, here's something for your listeners. My dad grew up in outback Australia, real Australia. So he grew up in a country town called Denali. And one thing that he taught me with country values is always to give people time. So that's what I do. I'm happy to give people time and have a discussion with them. And then, if the stars align and the time is right down the track, everything, it'll come back to me. So it's my philosophy is the more. So I just give and of time in this case, and what comes back to me comes back to me, and that probably underscored, the awards that I've won. I just give people time. So I think that it doesn't cost you anything. There's no downside to it, and it might actually just set the compass for you. And I think also when you're moving countries, that's pretty massive. That's scary. If you can have some semblance of what the outcome will look like, I think for one or more partners in the relationship, if that's true, it can just alleviate some of that anxiety as well.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're working quite a relaxed sort of way. Like you say, you speak to people and then you're there ready when they're ready, which takes a lot of that pressure off.
Yeah, I just believe in if it's the right fit, it will happen.
So how does the process of negotiating work if you are trying to do it on your own and you don't have the support of a buyer's advocate?
You kindly sent that question to me ahead of time, and I appreciate that, because I don't know how to answer that. I was talking to my colleague here, we were just having a chat, and I said, it's like me trying to teach somebody the whole career of negotiation. And I've just finished the Harvard University Mastery negotiation course, and that was 6 weeks. So I'll give some basics. And look, I probably wouldn't be going it on my own. That's just my thoughts, because there's just too much to educate someone on. It's basically my career. You've got to ask questions. A lot of people, the biggest mistake is they're just taken along in the negotiation and they're reactionary. And often they won't succeed in buying it because they're not strategic. So you need to be strategic. To be strategic, you have to ask questions, but you have to know what questions to ask. That's the challenge. And that comes from the experience. For example, how do you, and it's underscored by your relationship with the agent. So before I go into a negotiation, I'm looking at the motivation of the vendor. What sort of settlement are they looking for? Are they motivated? Where are they going? What's my relationship with the agent? What's the demographic of buyers? So what's my competition if they're older? So I just went into a negotiation and we were successful. I said to my clients, who are both 80, gorgeous, and I said, the other two buyers, I had all the intel, the other two buyers are older. I said, they're sitting down trying to establish what we're going to pay. They have deep pockets because they're scaling down. It's a really good property for a scale downer. I said, you need to think about that. And this was a whole strategy piece, and we did this 2 days out of the close of the EOI. EOI, expressions of interest, is a method of sale here, and that is the hardest sale even for local people here. I get called in a lot because EOI, in my opinion, is really underscored by my relationship with the agent. And my relationship, I've never burnt a bridge in 30 years, so I got pretty good relationships with agents. I've either worked with them or I've trained them. Yeah, I think it's tricky. Find out as much information as possible, but there are rules, and I don't have enough time to teach you. Like, for example, if you're buying before auction and it's auction week, you will never be able to buy it on a Monday or a Tuesday. It will always, you start the negotiation on a Tuesday and it will be consummated on the Wednesday. And that's because of the 3 days calling off. So there's certain levers and the like that you need to be aware of to know when to start the process to have success. Never make an offer on a Friday, because then they'll shop it around at the open and see if they get something better.
Yeah, so many tips. A buyer's advocate charges a fee for the service, but that fee can be so worthwhile as an investment because it can save you so much in the long run. Like you were saying, it can save you time, it can save you money. Have you got any examples of ways that you can save clients time and money?
It's not just time and money. What it is if you buy the wrong thing now, the pain is in 5 to 7 years. And you want this property to work to give you leverage to the next property. Unless it's your last property, like my clients that bought already. And that's the intel. That's the protection piece. So there's plenty of clients that we've saved money for. That's one part. When we enter a negotiation, we're clear and we communicate this to the client. Our number one goal is to get the property. Our number 2 goal is to save you money. We can't save you money if we haven't got the property. And they're like, yeah, you're right. So we do save quite a bit. We did a stat on it, 9.3% under client's reserve is what we save. For what that's worth, it's just a percent. And we love the negotiation space. And we like to think we're pretty good at it. Getting the right property. So if I don't think, I've got to listen sometimes to what people want and what will be a good property for resale. So I'll always respect my clients' wishes, but I will always give them my advice. So they can lean into the advice or they can go with what they want. Because you've got to be happy. I mean, if it's going to make them happy, they're buying happiness. They're going to be living in that house. They just need to realise that, they might have a challenge. If it's on a main road, it's going to be driven by price when they resell. And if they're okay with that, then I've done my job.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like you say, there's that short-term money saving from negotiating and buying a property, but there's also that long-term vision as well for how it can impact you in the future financially as well if you make the wrong decision.
It's huge. I went for a power walk with a girlfriend the other day. She'd bought the wrong property 10 years ago, and she described it to me. It was an investment property. And I just think, I don't think you could buy worse property. Like, that's what I thought. I held back. But if she'd had me and she'd known me 10 years ago, she wouldn't be in that dilemma. And that's the big piece that looms large for me. The other factor I will talk about is advocacy is a very sweet spot to fill, because an advocate is not a salesperson. They're an advocate. They're an advisor. So the advocate's values is so important. And it's really hard when you're interviewing to assess that when you're halfway around the world. All our advocates are 50 plus women. They've all had sensational careers already and they're overqualified, but they love people, they love property, and they love creating outcomes. That is the perfect advocate. They're basically replicas of me. I'm 51. I've already had a successful career and I love being in this space. But if you employ an advocate that is focused on income rather than client outcome, you're in a dangerous position.
Does all come down to the values, doesn't it?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
So what are the biggest challenges for people who are new to Australia when it comes to negotiating? You've kind of talked a bit about some of those tips around when offers shouldn't be put in on a Friday or things like that.
I think if you boil it down, knowing the strategy and what questions to ask, but the other thing coupled with that is understanding values, because most people go on the quotes to establish value. You can't do it. You have to be independent in your valuation of the property. And that's why we have CoreLogic, Bluebeam, PDOT. We pay for an awful lot of data. And, you know, we can lean on valuers as well. So we do our own independent report on price. And that's invaluable, because the agent's price needs to align with that. And the other thing is, without going into too much as another topic, but people come to me and they've tried to buy a property beforehand, before auction, for example, because I don't like auction, fair enough. But only buy a property beforehand if it's going to benefit you. And there are certain rules when you buy before auction that if you don't follow, all you're doing is disclosing your hand. So there's a very nuanced conversation that you have with the agent. Before I even talk price, I will have had 3 or 4 conversations with that agent. You cannot have one all day.
Now, buying property across Australia is different from state and territory to different locations. What are your top negotiation tips for buying specifically in the Melbourne property market?
Well, I won't frame it compared to others, but I think the biggest challenge is which some people don't realise. They just think they missed out because they didn't have enough money. But when they come and they tell me their story, I know it's strategy. I'm thinking we could have bought that. So it's knowing the questions to ask. It's having the access to data. It's having a strategy. It's too big a topic to sort of go into, but, you know, not ringing the agent and asking them every question, because then that feels like the Spanish Inquisition and they'll just shut down. But it's having those multiple conversations. That's one of the reasons why I have the multiple conversations, and to build rapport and to, you know, move it forward. And whenever you need something information-wise, you need to always lead with the benefit to them to tell you. And look, that's a skill that I've trained other people in. That's just, these are all little things that are just popping into my head, but it's all of that whole landscape and experience put together. But I think the hardest part is the negotiation, and then coupled with finding off markets, finding opportunities.
Now, what's one thing that buyers should always ask themselves before making an offer?
Well, it depends on the method. So if you're trying to make an offer before auction, unless you know what the trigger point is, which is where the owner will put on the market, don't bother. To get the trigger point, you need a relationship with the agent, and you need to sell the agent the benefit. I mean, I can do it, but I think it's very, very hard for the layperson, because there's no point in putting in an offer unless it's going to put it on the market, trigger the sale. It's probably too big a topic to answer. I mean, that's just one example. It depends on a number of factors: method, motivation, the agent, etc. The other, actually, I will say access to data, because when I go on a Zoom and I show them the data, in some instances, over 50% of the sales are marked with a red asterisk, which means they're undisclosed, which means these people in London will never be able to find that price. So how do you start gauging what something's worth if you can't access that data?
It's so difficult, especially when you're just looking at realestate.com.au and you just getting vague information from there, and it's
misleading because you've still got the quote price in your head and you don't realise it's sold for $400,000 above that.
Yeah.
And really the quote price that you should be chasing should be 200 under what you have been chasing, because you're never going to get success in that bracket.
Right, last question now. If you had to leave us with one piece of advice for somebody who's considering buying a home around Melbourne or the Mornington Peninsula, what would that advice be?
It sounds like I'm trying to get business, but I'm not.
Find a buyer's advocate.
Well, at least have a conversation and know what you're saying yes or no to. So I'm a big believer in delegating. I delegate a lot in my life so I can focus on what I'm good at. And even if we have the conversation and you leave more informed, better equipped, well, then happy days, that would make me very happy. If you feel that you want to lean in and use the services, well, that happy days too. I'm happy to work with you. I would say if you are going to go with a buyer's advocate, which I would highly recommend, is you need to do proper due diligence. As I said, it's a very sweet spot to fill. There are a lot of one-man bands that are entering the arena in buyer advocacy. They haven't invested the money on infrastructure and data and all of that, and they don't have the experience. They've done a 6-week course, and it's the blind leading the blind. So 80% are pretty average and 20% are great, just like most professions. So you really need to do proper research. Don't go by who you like or who, can talk the talk. You've got to lead with facts. I always say talk is cheap. What are the facts?
Yeah, no, some great advice there. Now, where can people go to find out more about you, and what would be the next steps?
Well, you can have a look at our website, have a look at our staff and our lovely dog. That's Davidson, davidsonadvocates.com.au. There's all the links there. There's a phone number you can ring, which goes to my mobile. And one of my pet hates is prompts, where you press a button if you want to speak to someone and blah, blah, blah. We have a company here called Telstra. They do our phone systems, and they have all these prompts, and everyone hates that. So I refuse to – people will learn that when they move to Melbourne. I refuse to do that. So most people that I had someone ring me at 8 o'clock the other night, and I said, hello, Tonya speaking, and she was so shocked. She said, oh, I thought I'd get an answer machine and I'd leave a message. I said, no, you've got me. So then we spoke for 20 minutes. So if I'm in an appointment, it will go to my voicemail, or you can just send me an email.
Great, and I'll pop all of your links here in the show notes as well. Oh, well, thank you so much. That's been really valuable. It's been really helpful and given me lots of tips and information. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Karen.
So thanks again to Tonya for coming on. There was so much useful information shared there. I'm sure you got a lot out of this episode. I'll pop Tonya's details in the show notes if you want to click through and reach out to her with any questions. So that's it from me this week. Let's get building your new life in Australia, one episode at a time.